Alright everybody, so how we doing today? It's time to tackle my favorite people in the whole wide world, the EU and the globalists. But here is an article that I think should be most interesting to the Trump Republicans amongst us. Macron's foolishness. Trump vows to hit back against French digital tax. U.S. President... Hold on a second. Okay. U.S. President Donald Trump has promised to take substantial reciprocal action against the proposed French digital tax if it seeks to target any American technology firm. The president took to Twitter on Friday afternoon with the threat of retaliation following the recent passage of a law in France, which would impose a new 3% tax on tech firms such as Facebook and Amazon. The tweet reads, at Real Donald Trump, France just put a digital tax on our great American technology companies. If anybody taxes them, it should be their home country, the USA. We will announce a substantial reciprocal action on Macron's foolishness shortly. I've always said American wine is better than French wine. President Trump insists that if any country should tax American tech firms, it should be their home country, the USA. He then took a pot shot at his French counterpart and one-time best pal, Emmanuel Macron, calling out his foolishness and then denigrating one of France's most cherished exports. I've always said American wine is better than French wine. The new tax signed into law on Wednesday will affect companies with at least $834 million or $750 million in global revenues, or those that earned over $25 million from digital activity, such as advertising in France. All Trump would really have to do is simply state that the U.S. does not recognize French authority to tax American companies. That's all he would have to do. And that in itself would be a very correct law, a correct approach to the law. I will say, however, that these American tech companies are not private companies. They're a form of corporate fascism because they are subsidized by the government. They're not a publisher, they're a platform secured by the government because they're subsidized in Silicon Valley, which would make the French position even more untenable. Anyway, at the passage of the bill earlier this week, Trump warned the tax unfairly targets American companies and ordered investigation into the new measure, which, according to the U.S. Representative Robert Lighthizer, will determine whether it's discriminatory or unreasonable and burdens or restricts United States commerce. White House spokesman Judd Deere on Friday announced the administration is looking at all policy tools available to counter the new tax. Paris responded to Trump's tweet with Finance Minister Bruno Le Maire saying they would like to come to an agreement with Washington, but in the absence of one, France intends to implement its national decisions. The general taxation of digital activities is a problem that concerns us all. Le Maire adding saying that France wants to reach consensus on that with all the G7 members. Well, look, France is part of the EU. The EU doesn't really respect national sovereignty. They're globalists. And furthermore, this sort of taxation against these subsidized firms really doesn't accomplish much, especially if it's only 3%. It strikes me as a fairly impotent measure, which makes Macron look even more foolish than Trump was suggesting, in my opinion. Mind you, taxation is theft by any reasonable definition. Literally read any dictionary on the definition of theft, and then look up the definition of taxation. Taxation fits nicely into the direct definition of theft. You really want the French stealing from American companies, however subsidized? Of course you don't. And the fact that Macron thinks he can get away with something like this is dumb. Is completely dumb. But is it as dumb as the EU implementing hate speech laws, but hate speech being sort of a nebulous phrase with no clear definition that is universally agreed upon, and can be arbitrarily applied in almost any way you want? So it's very denigrating of free speech. The EU is full of despotic, self-interested morons who just want what they want and don't really represent the people. That's what the yellow vests were really about. Forget the increasing fuel prices. That was just the straw that broke the camel's back. I'm absolutely convinced these people represent nobody but Brussels and themselves. But still, you know, this is something that the U.S. can just say no to rather easily, I think. This is Macron stepping way outside of his purview. Anyway.